Well,
Oh,
hi everyone.
oh,
Yay, Erin, so good. It's wonderful to see you here today. We are going to be spending the next hour getting started with qualitative data analysis. I'm going to be talking about open tools and methods specifically. There are a lot of excellent paid tools, but since in Love Data Week, we like to talk about open source resources, and because very few campuses, maybe two or three, depending how you count it, have campus-wide licenses for paid tools. Open tools kind of seems to be the way to go. Also, just want to say that it is just a getting started session. So if you're an experienced qualitative researcher, there may be some boring periods. I encourage you to sort of do whatever you do at those times. So I'm going to be starting pretty basic. Just want to say, this is part of UC Love Data Week. You probably all came to this knowing that this is the last session this week, but as the different workshop pages get populated with slides and recordings, you may want to revisit this site. So here's the huge and daunting list of topics. I'm going to be talking about basics of qualitative research, a little bit of methodology, some tips. I'm not going to go into some of these very deeply, getting started with coding, and then really kind of get into some of the tools. My slides are super dense, and so I will not be going through word for word. So if you see a dense slide, don't worry, but it does mean that you'll be able to go back to the slides and get the content you need. I also want to do a shout out for Celia Emmelhines and Anna Sackman, whose 2022 presentation sort of got this particular presentation up and running. Also, please do feel free to ask questions in the chat. I talk pretty fast and there's a lot of content to cover, so I probably won't be coming back in and out of the chat, but Erin, who is the Research Data Management Service Lead here at the UC Berkeley Libraries, and Scarlett, a domain consultant for Berkeley's Research IT, are both here to help answer questions. And they both have qualitative research experience, so I'm really glad to have them here. Okay, so I'm not going to delve into this slide too deeply, but I just want to kind of start with a general idea that we're talking about the same terms as each other. So quantitative, upper left, data that can be numerically analyzed and quantified into hard facts, and qualitative, non-numerical data that describes qualities, opinions, or feelings. I think that qualitative data can be a little more rigorous and content rich than that implies, but it's a good enough division for now. I feel really strongly about showing you this slide because if you look at this, you may have seen research life cycle sort of circular diagrams before. But today, out of this one, we're really only talking about number 4 on this diagram. So if you have not yet done qualitative research, or you're sort of thinking about kind of really digging in and enhancing your practice, note that there's all these other steps, and it's a very rigorous process, and it's a circular process. So there's going to be iteration. We're going to talk about that later. And you know, like I said, you can come back to this slide, but again, we're just focusing on the actual data analysis and coding today. So for those of you, again, who have not yet done qualitative analysis, I'm starting very basic here. This is what you're looking at. So I decided to take a series of oral histories that were done by the Medical Library Association. The link is here on the slide. There's 116 of them. And I wanted to use these oral histories to determine the question, why do people decide to become librarians? Or more particularly medical librarians. So there's all these transcripts. And the transcripts are your data. So your data literally look like that left-hand column. It's like, you know, the interview with someone. As I kind of browse through the transcripts, I have some ideas of what my general topics might be. So you can see them here: role models, parents, gendered options, personality, and internships. These may be reasons people decide to become librarians. But this is just kind of my gut feeling. The coding and theme development and eventual analysis is where you confirm this and how you can make a strong research case that you have correctly identified the themes present in your data. So that's what we're working toward. Notice I have these color coded. So then when you're doing initial coding of the transcripts, this is what it will look like. You have the transcript, you're reading through it. Whenever you see a section of it that seems to correspond to one of the reasons or codes that you're looking at, you color code it. And then later you're going to pull all the greens together and look at them, and all the pinks together and look at them, and then all the yellows together and look at them. And you'll kind of have this rich set of information that really focuses in on the particular code that you've determined. Now, remember, again, this is initial coding. It's an iterative process. And so you're going to do one set of coding. And then if you're doing a team project, you'll all sort of compare coding. And it's pretty amazing how differently different people code things. Or if you walk away for a week or two, you'll come back and you'll be like, why did I see Erin and Scarlett smiling? Why did I code that way? So you really do want to kind of think about it moving as a circular process. But this is the general idea of what we're aiming at. And because this research is conducted rigorously, you do want to think about what your theoretical approach is. So I'm not going to read this slide to you, but you can see it has 6 different things and they all apply to qualitative research. And you do want to be coming from a particular focus. So for example, I have done some research on the morale of library staff. The groundbreaking paper by Katrina Davis Kendrick was on phenomenological research. I took a different approach and mine was grounded theory. You're kind of getting to similar places in the end, but it's a very different way of approaching. Similarly, if you decide to go ahead and do some of this research, how are you finding the people that you're going to interview and what implications does it have for your research? Again, not going to go through this slide in detail, but it is something to think about. There's pluses and minuses to each method. I'm not saying one is better than any other. It depends on your situation and what kind of deductions you want to draw from your data, how strongly you can make those depending on who you've sampled. And again, I'm saying again, but I don't know if I said this yet, but do feel free to contact me if I can be helpful. I can't, of course, guide all the many people here today through each of your research projects, but I can give you good referrals and ideas. The next 2 slides, this is getting a little too specific, but because it's happening at the point in the research before you really start your full-on coding, I'm just putting these 2 slides here, and it's about how to de-identify the information that you're finding. So you've figured out your theoretical approach and you've sampled people and you've done your interviews. Before you actually start coding, you want to remove anything that's identifying of people. And so here's some just ideas of how to do that. You can rename people or places. You can do generic things to replace them. You can redact comments, that kind of thing. It's suggested that you keep a log and that log be protected. And some of this, if you do end up doing an IRB where you have to kind of ask the institutional review board to give you permission to work with human subjects, some of this, they will specify how you have to protect this stuff. But okay, so here's kind of where the pedal hits the metal. So you're going to get started with coding. So you're going to gather your anonymized research material. So you've done this de-identification process, which is kind of good for you too. You may interview people and they just stand out to you. And so from their transcripts, you can remember them very specifically. But sometimes you can't remember who said a particular thing because it's anonymized, and that's good. You're looking at the content, not remembering the specifics of the person who said it. You can do how different people do different things. You'll get a flow for yourself, highlighting quotes, adding comments. You can memo. There are actually specific tools to use for memoing if that's a process that appeals. We can talk more about that if you are interested. It's very, very useful to do some free form note taking. Just as you read the transcripts, things will just come into your mind and you'll say to yourself, hey, that's just like this other thing I just read. just capture all of those thoughts. You will use them later, I promise. So you're kind of reading through the transcripts, and then you start kind of digging in a little bit. So you've done some note taking, you've tagged your topics. You want to start developing a list of codes. And personally, I delineate codes and themes. I'll talk about that in a second. I think in the slides of Celia and Anna, they think of those as kind of more one big topic. But either way, you're going to come up with lists of things like we saw with the example with librarians, like personality, or have you had internships, or role modeling for your parents, that kind of thing. Those are separate ideas, and you are wanting to focus in and in and in and in. In fact, they're saying focus on one or two larger codes and then think of subcodes. So you can imagine you're just kind of creating sort of a decision tree, or we would say in librarianship, a taxonomy of what you're seeing in the data. And then you'll see, this is my slide, not Celia and Anna's. I find it helpful to think this way, that you've kind of thought through the codes you expect to find, and then you've gone through and done the coding that you actually are seeing in the transcripts when you focus a little more. I think there's one more step, which is to really consider them as themes. And other people do think of them as themes. They should be distinct from each other, and you'll see all the different kind of decision-making points at the bottom here. It's much easier to sort of point this out in actual data. I feel like I'm sort of talking theoretically, but I think when you do the research, this will start to make sense to you. Here's a good, helpful slide to maybe give you a little more context. So the left-hand column, the raw data. This is what the person actually said when you interviewed them. Then depending on your own focus and what your research is about, you might come up with these preliminary codes. So retirement age, financial obligations, dreams of early retirement. Personally, the final column 3, I would call that a theme. And I'm not sure I would say retirement anxiety is the theme I would pick, but fair enough. I'm not in this data either. So this is kind of a good visual representation of what you're aiming at in general. Hopefully that's all making sense.
And I'm actually going to just interrupt for a second, because we do have a question that came into the chat that I think it would be good to address right now.
Yes.
So you might be able to see it, but I can read it out loud. What are the actual steps at this point? If coloring, does the merge, I'm assuming that's function, perhaps, work, or are you putting things into Excel encoding, merging, etc.?
I love that question. And what I'm going to say about that question is, please hold that question and let's look at Taguette, because I think actually the demonstration of Taguette is going to answer all of those questions, I think. And if you don't feel the same way, definitely chat back and Erin will see it. So I'll give a little pause at the end of Taguette before I go to other tools so that we can see if it makes a little more sense. But thank you for asking. I'm really excited you're thinking that way. So now I'm going to sort of just a little bit about the actual tools. There's a ton of open source qualitative data analysis, QDA tools. There'll be a slide later which has another big list of other things you can check out. The ones that tend to come up the most are Taguette, QCoder, QualCoder, and also QDA Lite, which I don't see here on this particular guide. I love this guide. Boris, I don't know, Scarlett, have you seen Boris before? Yeah, it's just for audio material. I'm not sure why NYU is kind of elevating it to be the same as these other ones. But pretty much people are kind of focusing in on 3 or 4 good free tools. Today, I'm going to talk a lot about Taguette. Why? It's free, open source. Well, the others ones are too. Flexible tagging options. I do think it's more flexible than some of the other tools. It's very good for people getting started. It does not have a lot of bells and whistles, which as you get to be a more experienced researcher, you will want. It's not the absolute sort of strongest for collaboration. You can do collaborative work in Taguette, but I wouldn't say it's the strongest. And it's also easy to import and export. So one concern that we always have here at the library is if there's a tool that we pay for that you get all involved in and you get all of your tools, your research into it, and then you leave Berkeley, you've kind of lost your access to that tool and may have to end up paying in your next setting. That would not be true for Taguette. You would be able, it's free, you just take it with you. So Taguette is using this Calibra, which is an open source ebook management tool, to convert your documents so that you can tag and do other things with them. It converts them into HTML. You can see at the bottom, huge limitation depending on what your research is involving. It does not support audio, video, image, or spreadsheet files. So you might need a commercial qualitative software for that. And I should actually, I think I have not said this yet, but I should say, if you have a very small project, like 5 to 10 interviews, you may even decide that you don't want to go into all the trouble of learning a software program. You can do some of this management, as you can imagine, like even in a Word file or Google Doc. I mean, if you're just coloring codes and then wanting to bring all the different colored codes into groupings, it's not that hard to do if you have very few interviews. But if you're getting over about 10, you really do want to think about an easier way to manage your content, and this would be it. Here's the Mac slide. I know many of you use Macs. UC Berkeley Library gives us all PCs, so I didn't have this issue, but I do have a Mac laptop and I tested it. And so Macs don't want to open apps from unidentified developers. And so there are instructions on the Taguette page for Mac installation, but I thought that they were not completely correct. And so the right-hand column here is something I found from the Mac help. And this, I used this and did successfully install Taguette on a MacBook Air. So this is what it looks like getting started with Taguette. And I do really suggest that you keep this tab open if you're using Taguette, because when at the beginning, you do have to kind of just find your way around it a little bit. I have to say, I've now tested about 4 or 5 different free, open source, whatever, QDA tools, and Taguette was beyond a shadow of a doubt the easiest and fastest to get into. It's pretty user-friendly and intuitive, but you still want to have some help from the getting started page. So I installed Taguette in single user mode, which I had to do because I don't have admin rights on my own work laptop. If you want to collaborate with people, you would want to use the server mode, and there's information about that later in the presentation. But just for your guidance, I installed it in single user mode. So this is what the welcome screen looks like. And you can see there's an option to create a new project. So I selected that. And then I had to type in the name of the project. So like the overarching name and the description of the project. So this is not transcript by transcript yet. This is the overarching name of the project. And I got these from the Medical Library Association, their oral histories. I'm calling it the path to librarianship. And so I created my project. So then once my project is created, it's sitting there waiting for me to upload the transcripts into it. So if I were super, super ambitious, I would upload 116 transcripts, but in this case, I uploaded 1, and it was the transcript of the interview with Ruth Holst. And you can see the notations I did there. I just navigated to it on my computer and then clicked on import. So then I'm trying to create tags. So I have that tag personality. You can call them codes or tags. They'll, in Taguette speak, it's tag because Taguette. So there's like, I would do tags like personality, again, role modeling, gender expectations, whatever, the ones that we saw earlier that were colored. So I'm adding the tag personality by clicking on the highlights tab and then saying create a tag. And then I typed in personality. So then in the next slide, you'll see what it looks like to add the tag. And then I do that. And then I go back into documents, and there's my document, and I'm ready to start tagging. Okay, so hopefully you're with me. It's kind of a lot to kind of try to visualize, but hopefully this is making sense so far. So this is where you're actually adding the coding into the document. So I thought it was pretty easy actually. So I just, used my cursor and highlighted a section of text. And the little box that says new highlight just popped up. It's like, oh, Taguette saying, oh, you're highlighting something. I bet you want to add a tag to it. And it says new highlight, and it opens the box. And then you check personality. You can see that it's entered now as one of the tags. Interesting is their default, but personality is the one I added. And you do save and close. And so you have now just added a tag. And this is what it looks like then. When you open the document, the tags are actually coded with a color. And you can color the different tags with a different indicator color, pink, blue, whatever. So hopefully that's kind of answering the question that was asked before, which is that you're going through the document and you'll have a list of tags that you're assigning to different sections of the document, and they'll come up looking colored, just like in the first few slides that I showed, where there was that bit of script and it had all the different colored tags. That's exactly what Taguette is doing. And then, you're just gathering the different sections together that you've coded with a particular tag. Hoping that makes sense. So let's say that you want to see all of those sections that you just coded with personality. Like I want to just read about personality, like who becomes a librarian personality wise. I'm not interested right now in their upbringing or any other reasons. I just want to see the personality stuff. To do that, you'd click on the highlights tab, the see all highlights next, and then the personality. And you can see the two next to personalities that I've coded 2 sections of the document with that tag. And they now are showing in that bottom window. So those are the 2 sections that I said were personality related. And then you can throw them into a Word document. And you can do all sorts of things with them. You can do comments and memo and merge codes and do all sorts of other things, annotate them. So it's really as easy as that. I know that's a lot of talking from me about what actually in real life took about 5 minutes. Well, the coding, you have to be a little more thoughtful, but the actual producing of this document was pretty straightforward, I thought. Not everybody's brains work the same, but hopefully you would find it the same. I do want to say that these screenshots are from a PC. I did duplicate the process on my Mac last year when there was no Mac installer. So I hope you will have the same process in a Mac. I'm not 100% sure. Let us know if not. And then last but not least, I think, yeah, that's my last Taguette slide, sorry. You can export the project. So if you are changing computers, or you don't want to have it sitting in Taguette, you want to work on a different project, you can export it and open it again later as if it was like a document, but all of your stuff will come through the documents, the tags, everything. And then on the server, you can add collaborators. You'll see a screen that looks like this middle column. You can also merge tags. So if you've created tags, for example, and then you're working with another person and they're like, you created these 2 tags, but I don't think they're different enough. I really think that you should merge them. Or they're so similar and they each only have 3 sections that you're kind of giving too much weight to this lesser topic. If you merge these 2, it will be stronger. There's a way to do that in Taguette as well. Yeah. So hopefully that all kind of gives you an indication of what it would look like to do the kinds of things that you would be doing as a qualitative researcher, at least the basics. Yeah, it's a little sort of boring to talk through it, but I think it'll be helpful for you to have the slides and be able to see and follow later. There's also, I should say, at the bottom of this presentation, 22 of the slides that Anna and Celia used that I decided not to use, but I want you to have them. And they go more step by step, shows you how to create a code book, a lot of good content in those slides. So you'll be getting those with these slides. So the person that asked in the chat before, I don't know if you want to re-chat, but if that didn't answer your question, could you just give us an indication?
Yeah, the original question around the merging and of the tags and general like coding. Yeah. Yes, and I will say I know Scarlett's doing a fabulous job addressing questions as they're coming up in the chat too. So definitely feel free to write back in or respond to anything we do just to make sure we're addressing things. But I think so far we're good.
Okay,
And
excellent.
yeah.
And thank you, Scarlett. Really, really appreciate it. I'm sort of jealous because I want to see what you're saying. Scarlett is a much more experienced qualitative researcher than I am. So what she
I wouldn't
says,
say
please,
that, Anne.
please listen. No, no, it's fine. It's good. Okay, so here we go. So that was Taguette. Oh, sorry. So next I'm going to sort of quickly touch on QDA Miner Lite. So as you can see from this description, researchers can analyze text, image files, convert in vivo project files, et cetera, et cetera. I actually went through slide by slide how to use QDA Miner Lite last year. It's pretty, I thought it was pretty complicated. And so I decided not to subject you all to going slide by slide through it this year, but I included the slides. So again, at the very end, there's like my group of 7 slides and then Celia and Anna's group of 22 slides. You pretty much have to use the manual. So with Taguette, I really was able to get quite far, just kind of, goofing around and being used to getting used to new software. But that did not help me with QDA Miner. QDA Miner Lite is the not full version. And as you can see, the full version is $245 a year for academic use. I checked that yesterday. It's still the case. And as far as I can tell, it has some really pretty sophisticated options. So even if you look at that comparison between light and full, it's interesting just to see the options it has. Many, many, many more options than Taguette. So if you're sort of here at this workshop because you're going to do a sort of small-ish contained study. So the morale study that I did had 34 interviewees. Because we were collaborative, it's probably good that we didn't use Taguette, but we probably could have gotten away with Taguette. But if you're doing a project that's larger scale or more complex or mixed method or with a larger team or something that you're planning to continue moving forward, you might want to use a tool that has more functionality. Also, although QDA Miner has a little page, which I have linked here, about using QDA Miner on a Mac, basically you can't. That's what I'm reading in discussions online. So beware. So I think that's going to cover a lot of you. The next, I'm going to talk a little bit about QCoder. I have not used QCoder. I did take a look at it. It does require some coding. And so if you already use R, it may feel like home to you, and it may be a very, very good choice for you because you can sort of see that they give you some test code there. But if you want to have a little more control over what you're doing, it will help you to have some R coding to use this. I like in the left-hand side, the little quote, like all software, there will be a learning period. So I don't think anybody's saying that you won't have a learning period. Although I mean, to be honest, I didn't think Taguette was that bad. I mean, I felt like I was up and running in about half an hour, which is not bad. But again, less functionality. So you just have a trade-off balance kind of thing. I did take a little bit of a look at the video that's here in the bottom right. iAssist, if you're not familiar, is a really good professional association for people working with social sciences, data, and technology. And they did a webinar comparing Taguette and QCoder. So if you're, want to see these issues I'm talking about in action, I strongly recommend you take a look at that video. Then QualCoder is actually based on Python. And by the way, you'll see here Jessica Hagman. She is a librarian at the University of Illinois, and she's like the queen of qualitative data analysis tools. She knows a lot. She wrote a fantastic comparison of them with screenshots and detailed information. She's saying that the coding is pretty straightforward, and so I would believe her if she says that. Installation is more involved, and so we're getting back into that thing of, are you using PC or Mac, and do you have rights to your computer? Are you going to be doing collaboration? You have to think about all those things. So I think this is definitely a contender, especially if you already know Python. I'm seeing at the beginning, I forgot that she said it can be installed on Windows, Mac, or Linux. So you just sort of want to kind of see if you can find user forums or something and just get a sense of what the challenges might be for you as you're thinking about what tool to commit to. And when I say commit to, it's probably smart to be, if you're going to be doing the work to really, really invest in a tool, you might want to do some kind of research on it first, like what would be a fit for you and what you see the future of your qualitative analysis life being like. Okay. So this was kind of the fun slide to prepare. I didn't have this slide last year. I thought, well, okay, this field is burgeoning. I'm certainly getting more and more questions. Excuse me. So I'm the librarian for research methods at Berkeley, and I'm getting more and more questions about qualitative data analysis and how to approach it. Of course, I say Taguette, but then, there's also a lot of paid tools that we sort of say to people, well, maybe you want to go for that. Like Deduce is one you'll see in a later slide that has a pretty low cost barrier, and some of the others have student licenses. But I, like to say to people, well, what are the free things that you might want to use that you'd be able to continue using? So I did a little librarian dive, and this is what I came up with. And by the way, the being mentioned in the top is a link to a Reddit conversation, but why not? Just, wherever you can find the information, find it. So Dovetail was the thing that came up the most, but it did make me think that they were perhaps powering some of the discussion, because a lot of the Dovetail links were sponsored. I mean, there were people that I trusted that were saying it's a possibility, but I never found the free version. So I wonder if that was like something that they had when they were first getting up and running, that they gave people free access. I did not see any free access, and it's a business kind of solution. So that may be a plus or a minus depending on what you're doing. Excuse me a second.
All I see, Anne, just to jump in, is a free trial on their website.
Yeah.
I don't see. Yeah.
I don't mind. I mean,
of these have.
Yeah, free trial's great. And if you get your stuff all organized and it's a free trial if it's a free trial for a month, you can often manage to do it in a month if you're really focused. Sorry, getting over COVID. But, a free trial for something that you may want to come back and use again. Like if, for example, again, the morale study that I keep referring to, we came back to that. It was 4 of us working on it. We came back to it again and again and looked at the data again and again. So a free trial where we got locked out after a month and then we thought of something else the next month would have been super depressing. So I do sort of caution about that a little bit. And then you can do these things in Python. QualCoder is a Python package. I felt like I was seeing, as I researched, more packages for R than for Python. But that may just be me. I don't know, Scarlett or Erin, if you've seen a number of packages that use Python code. And some of it is like, if you're comfortable with one or the other, they will feel like home, and that is a plus. I'm also seeing these tools, Voyant, Libro, AntConc, I don't know how you say it, and qcoder. I looked at each of them. They look fine. They look limited. I didn't see anything that was like, you are getting the sense now that I'm kind of biased towards Taguette, because I just felt like it was so well constructed for the kinds of things that most of my library users are asking me about. I didn't see anything that would move me away from Taguette. WEFT QDA was mentioned a few times, but it's no longer being updated. CATMA and QCA Map. CATMA is a German site. Boris is the one that we were talking about earlier. But remember that for a simple project, you can use Word and Excel or Google Docs, Google Sheets. I mean, I shouldn't be saying Word and Excel are free tools because they're not, but many of us have licenses to them that we don't pay for. So that's kind of the rundown of free tools.
And sorry,
yeah.
I'm just gonna, I think this would be a good point to jump in. But there was a question around uploading documents and transcripts to some of these, especially the cloud-based tools. And so it felt like we just want to take a second, since I know this is a question that comes up so semi-regularly for sure, for us at least. So I'll just read it out. It says, can you speak more about the uploading of documents and transcripts with sensitive data to a QDA software server like Taguette or others? Would you recommend researchers to de-identify data before moving to data analysis?
Okay, I'm going to ask Scarlett and Erin for some comments on this, but my immediate response to that is if you're doing an IRB, they will be very specific with you about how you have to handle any content that's identifiable. And they're very, very concerned about qualitative data recording. So I can tell you that if you've even just the storing of the recordings so that someone can then create a transcript is very, very carefully delineated in an IRB. In our case, we were allowed to have the recordings, I think it was for like a week. So we would, do the interview with someone, record it, and then within a week, we had to have the transcript created and de-identified and the original recording deleted. So they were very, very specific about trying to keep privacy. And because even voices are identifiable. So they were concerned about the audio files, very concerned. It's easiest for the transcriber to and that may be you, but you'll see it's easiest to transcribe with the identifiable information and then de-identify. It's too hard, like as you're listening to the person talking, to actually be typing and like, oh, they just said their university name, I'll change it. You kind of can't do that. You have to kind of do the transcribing first and then do the de-identifying. So I would not be uploading to any cloud-based tool anything that was identifiable, for sure. And in fact, my understanding, and this is where Erin and Scarlett, you may have more information, is that the tool has to be approved for the level of sensitivity of the data by campus, at least at Berkeley. I don't know what it's like at other campuses. Erin, can you say a little more about that?
Yeah, I can jump in a little bit and definitely Scarlett as well. So yes, so I'd say and what you said is important to keep in mind. I think IRB is just a sort of a fundamental place where many of these conversations should come up. So that's just, I think for all of us who do research, that's definitely something to keep in mind in the process. Yeah, so across the UCs, it'll vary by campus, but there should be processes for reviewing use of what are called like third-party platforms. So something basically that the campus itself does not operate or have maybe a direct license with, and how it handles institutional data. So in this case, like research data, and often to determine the steps and to get a given, cloud-based tool or third-party platform approved for use, or basically storing university data. Some of it is tied to the classification. So that's that, across the UCs, we have that P1 through P4 classification system. So based on the data that will be uploaded to, Taguette, for example, if you're using the server version of Taguette, then, you just need to make sure it's clear what level of identifiability that data Taguette will be receiving, and then, work with your local offices, usually like an information security office, depending on the campus, to figure out if it's okay. So there is a process. How you connect to that process through your given, campus will sort of vary, but definitely IRB should get you there. If you find yourself outside of IRB going through another route, I guess I'll just say start with your librarian, but maybe I shouldn't just throw it to that. But yeah, there are definitely folks that can help you to make sure that you are, sufficiently protecting the data you're working with.
Yeah.
So Scarlett, is there anything you want to add?
No, that's all I was going to say. That's Research IT, which is the organization that I come from and Erin comes from, is that we partner with the library and we do a lot of consulting with researchers. So these are the types of questions that come in when anyone's doing qualitative research. There isn't always a set answer, and it might be different depending on your university, but seeking out support, we have these conversations, we talk to you about the type of data you have and then provide recommendations based on what's approved through campus and kind of help you navigate it. So if you're feeling like it's a complicated process, it's not because you're alone in that. It's often a complicated process to make sure that your data is stored and managed in the right way for its security. It's a really good thing to consider.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. Fantastic question. In fact, I'm thinking in future iterations, we should actually have a few slides about that. So important. It's a little bit different if you're not uploading to the cloud and you're only using like a single user license and everything's on your individual device. But you'll still want to be storing files. And for us, Box, with our IRB, storing them in a Box drive was enough security. So we can talk more about that later, but coming back to this, I did want you to sort of see a comparison of tools because, I'm talking about the free tools as if there are no other tools, but as you'll see from this slide, Atlas TI, Deduce, I'm not that familiar with Delve, Max QDA and NVivo are very, very powerful and commonly used qualitative data analysis software with very sophisticated options. And you'll be hearing a little bit from Scarlett later. We, the three of us, are pretty unhappy, to put it mildly, that there are no campus-wide or university-wide licenses for QDA software. Lots and lots of quantitative analysis software, but not QDA. And then these days, no presentation will be complete without a mention of generative AI. So I did a little bit of looking. I hadn't really come across it that naturally in my qualitative data analysis life. But when I looked, of course, there's a ton of stuff out there. It is here. So, excuse me. I did a Google search. I just did Chat GPT and qualitative data analysis, a zillion videos. So if you want to explore this, you can click on that link and see a lot of videos. There's Temple University has a guide that actually has some information on AI-based QDA tools. Atlas TI, which is a paid resource, has AI tools. And not surprisingly, AI is being used for transcription because it's really good at prediction, and natural language processing is the kind of term that's used if you ever see NLP. So AI is really in the mix. As you'll see from this paper that I've listed, AI-assisted qualitative analysis improves transparency, encourages human analysts to report AI prompts that help them. And can be reused by other researchers. So people really are maximizing use of this for qualitative data analysis. And since it's so good at analyzing language and text, it's not surprising. I really like this example. Sorry, hold on one second. Which says, I like it because it makes clear that ChatGPT is not all that. I kind of, my bias is that I want the humans to matter, sort of. So ChatGPT did not recognize all of the codes that human coders did, but also vice versa. So this is what we generally as librarians are trying to say, which is use ChatGPT and other AI tools the way they are meant to be used and for the things they are strongest for. So if ChatGPT is going to help me identify themes that I might not have seen, I'm definitely going to use it. I'm not at all saying don't use it, but just understand how it works and what it's doing and keep your critical thinking hat on. and be aware of what it's doing. You should be in control of your analysis. Okay. I could talk more, but I think I'll move on from that. So one other thing we want to just kind of make sure you think about is that after you've collected all of your qualitative data, a very strong value in quantitative data analysis, in fact, anybody that gets NIH funding needs to share their quantitative data, is sharing qualitative data. So there's ways and there's places, and this slide is kind of giving you a sense of why you might want to consider qualitative data repository. And the link will give you a sense of one to connect with. And then this slide is just giving you some further resources. They're kind of Taguette focused, sorry. Some really good guides. I've tried to list the resources that I found in the UCs, but Scarlett, I think you've done a better look at this. So we could adjust this slide later and add some more UC campus resources that you may have found. I would love that.
Yeah, sure.
Just thank you. So sorry. I want to call out SAGE research methods, which every campus has, so you should be able to look at that. It's a database that you should be able to reach through the library, and you just can search qualitative data analysis. Some of the stuff will be old, and luckily my feeling is that when I read the older stuff for qualitative data analysis, the essence of what it is still in place. So you can read ethnographies from quite some time ago, and a lot of the methodology still persists because it is so sort of human based, that the technology is not necessarily at the heart of what's happening with it. It's a helpful overlay. So I sometimes reject SAGE research methods results for quantitative analysis methodology, but not as often for qualitative. And then finally, if you're interested in managing your ethnographic data, Celia Emma Hines put together an entire curriculum, which is linked here. Okay. I think everybody would love for me to mute and have my coughing fits offline. And Scarlett, I'm going to let you take it away now.
Thanks you all for being here. And I'm just still responding to a couple things in the chat. So I just want to make sure that there wasn't anyone that I referred to asking their question out loud. Or maybe we can do that right after it, but there's a couple ones still going. Just give a second for that, and then I'll release this poll. So I'm working with Research IT, and we're working to help Berkeley campus get access to a licensed QDA tool so that all researchers would have access to a free analysis tool, such as in vivo max QDA or Atlas TI, and not have to use the hurdles or deal with these hurdles. And this is likely possibly happening where there are folks that believe in it at all the UCs. So we just want to get as much information as we can from you all. I just have a couple questions. I'm going to launch a poll, and if you can give us any feedback, it'll really help this, not just at Berkeley, but across all the UC campuses. It only is 4 questions, I believe, and it should be launched now. Just give a couple minutes.
Sorry, Scarlett. I forgot that the host has a different view.
And as folks are filling this out, and again, yeah, I echo Scarlett, this information would be just really helpful for us, but also just to kind of see what would be useful for you all as researchers. Just to follow up again on what Scarlett said, otherwise, if there are open questions or anything that was not addressed, please definitely in the chat let us know, or I think at this point, we could probably also, if folks wanted to unmute and ask, or raise your hand, please, first, and then we can maybe use that as a way to handle any questions if you want to ask out loud. I see a question about the slides. Uh,
Um,
the slides
uh,
will be, oh, sorry, Anne.
yeah. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. No, I was just going to say this. We will
Mhm.
make the slides available, but I'm now thinking um, that it won't be immediate because I can think that we might want to even just add the slides about the the IRB and the uploading data, sensitive data,
Yeah.
just add a little content about that. I think it's so important. And also the qualitative data resources at other campuses that I didn't find for that one slide. But they will go up and the recording will go up. They'll be available on the Love Data page for the workshop.
And so sorry, you all, I transferred this survey over from my version and missed UC Irvine. So if you are from Irvine, I apologize. You aren't forgotten. Then you can put in not affiliated and you can put it in the other at the bottom and then I'll know you're from Irvine. Thank you. Got almost 60% participation. Amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you,
Appreciate
everybody.
you all. And I always need allies with other UCs. And I'll just put my email in the chat if you want to talk about all of this. I've learned a lot about the process of compelling a large research university to get qualitative software over the past 6 months. And I'm happy to talk with anyone from other schools. So there's my email in there.
Thank you, Scarlett. So I guess I can like move the slide along underneath the poll, which is showing for me, but oops. So this is actually, that's kind of the end of the presentation. Thank you all for hanging in there with us. I know it was a lot of information and some of it pretty detailed and not necessarily applicable to your particular situation, but I cannot wait to read the chat. It just looks like there's going to be really interesting stuff in there. If there's things that, I'm feeling like it would be good for these slides to reflect some of the things that were in the chat. And so you may see your question reflected. And please feel free to contact me, glusker@berkeley.edu, or Scarlett with questions. We'll do what we can in trying to support the entire UC system. And then when you get the slides, you'll also see the sort of the 7 bonus slides with me trying to use QDA Miner, and also 22 bonus slides from Celia and Anna. Any other questions as we wrap up the hour?
I don't think so. I'm kind of scrolling back through chat to make sure we didn't miss anything. But yeah, I'll reiterate what Anne said. Thank you so much for being here. Just another reminder that the slides and the recording will be on the Love Data Week website in the next week or so. Let's say that. And
Yeah.
we, yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us with questions. And I have to, but I got to give a plug to reach out to your local librarian too, wherever you are at your campus. Reach out to them, and we can all connect that way. Because I know, as we've talked about, the qualitative data analysis research piece is a shared, I think, area of maybe challenge and a shared area of support for us on campus, across campuses. So we're down.
And I think the other thing that happens on many campuses, I do think it happens at Berkeley, is that because we have no campus-wide license, there's not a lot of instruction or easy to find support for qualitative research. And so it's been really interesting to me how many people have come, especially for me, undergraduate students that are doing like an honors thesis or something, that they're describing qualitative methods. And the way they're describing the way they're going about it is like, oh, you don't need to make all of this up. Let me talk to you about how this works and tools you can use. I mean, it drives me a little bit crazy to think that there's people out there that these tools could really, really help that aren't getting hooked up with them. So the more kind of familiarity that there is on campus, the better. And a lot of times the starting place is the library. A little bit of bias here, but
no, just a little.
just a little. Well, Well, okay. I mean, we're
Yeah.
just about at 2. I mean, if you want to stop the recording, I guess that's great, Erin. Thanks everybody for coming, and do let us know if we can help in any way or you have any questions that come up afterwards.